Donald Trump is losing control. Not slowly, not subtly, publicly, chaotically. And everyone inside the MAGA machine can feel it. This is what a political implosion looks like in real time. The Supreme Court strikes down Trump's tariff regime as unlawful, a humiliating rebuke from the highest court in the land. And instead of course correcting, he detonates a new crisis. A reckless 15% tariff slapped on the rest of the world under a grotesque distortion of the Trade Act of 1974. Markets are convulsing. Allies are recoiling. Investors are scrambling for cover. And MAGA Mike Johnson? He's pacing the Capitol like a man who knows the collapse has begun. He's admitting there's no appetite in Congress to codify Trump's tariff chaos. That's not policy debate. That's an incriminating admission. They know this is indefensible. While financial markets wobble, Trump is mocking the U.S. women's gold medal hockey team, joking he'd probably be impeached if he didn't invite them to the White House. The team declines. The humiliation spreads globally. This is the President of the United States, ranting, diminishing world-class athletes, spiraling into petty grievance politics while the economy trembles. Poll numbers are sinking into the mid-20s. Independents are abandoning him. The European Union is freezing trade deals. France has now banned Trump's own ambassador, Charles Kushner, from official meetings after open diplomatic sabotage. The Pentagon's top general is warning that the U.S. lacks the munitions and allied backing for the war Trump is floating. This isn't strength. It's magical thinking colliding with reality. And inside the MAGA cabal right now, the panic is real. Because this time, the collapse isn't theoretical. It's visible. Now let's talk about the lie. Because this is what Trump and his enablers always do. They create chaos. They deny responsibility. They gaslight the public. And then they pretend the collapse is somehow patriotic. Remember what Trump promised? He said his tariff strategy was genius. He said it would generate so much money that every American would receive a $2,000 tariff dividend. Before that, it was the $5,000 Doge dividend. Before that, it was healthcare that would be better and cheaper. It's always the same magical thinking. Let's look at what he actually said. He claimed the tariffs would be lawful. He claimed the courts would uphold them. He claimed the economic impact would be beautiful. And then the Supreme Court strikes it down. Unlawful. Not controversial, not debatable, unlawful. So what does MAGA Mike Johnson do? Instead of defending the legality, he starts hedging. He says it will be a challenge to find consensus legislatively. That's political speak for, we don't have the votes. We don't want ownership. We know this is toxic. That's the receipt. They knew the first tariff regime was on shaky ground. They pushed it anyway. The court rejects it. And instead of recalibrating, Trump imposes a new 15% tariff under Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974, a provision that experts are already calling patently unlawful in this context. This isn't policy. This is ego governance. And then comes the dividend lie. Carl Quintanilla reports what experts are saying. The odds of a $2,000 tariff rebate are effectively zero. Zero. The same way the $5,000 Doge checks evaporated. The same way healthcare promises evaporated. The same way Infrastructure Week lasted 4 years and produced nothing. It's bait and switch government. Now let's look at the humiliation piece. Trump is standing there with the men's gold medal hockey team. He says, in a demeaning tone, that they'll have to bring the women's team, and jokes that he'd probably be impeached if he didn't invite them. The men laugh. Kash Patel says, "I got it, boss." That moment tells you everything. It's small, it's insecure, it's transactional. The women's team then declines the invitation. That's not coincidence. That's consequence. And while that circus is unfolding, the Pentagon's top general is issuing a warning. The United States lacks the munitions and allied support to safely execute the kind of military action Trump is floating toward Iran. Let that sink in. The markets are wobbling because of unlawful tariffs. Allies are freezing trade agreements. France is banning Trump's own ambassador, Charles Kushner, from official meetings after he refuses to appear when summoned and starts attacking French domestic politics. That's not diplomacy. That's sabotage. And what does Trump do when faced with criticism? He attacks the Supreme Court. Even voices inside conservative media are calling it disgraceful. When Fox hosts start warning that rhetoric could ignite unrest, you know the situation is deteriorating. This is the pattern. Promise fantasy dividends. Impose reckless policy. Get slapped down by the courts. Double down. Attack institutions. Pretend strength. Deliver chaos. And MAGA Mike Johnson is stuck holding the bag because he knows this isn't sustainable. He knows Congress doesn't want to own it, and he knows the receipts are piling up. Let's go deeper, because when you actually line up the timeline, when you read the statements, the rulings, the reactions, what you see isn't just incompetence. You see a pattern of reckless escalation. Start with the Supreme Court decision. The court strikes down Trump's previous tariff regime as unlawful. Not a narrow technicality, not a procedural hiccup, unlawful. That means the authority he claimed to justify sweeping global tariffs did not exist in the way he used it. Now look at what happens next. Instead of respecting the ruling, Trump pivots to Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. That provision allows limited, temporary tariffs to address balance of payments deficits. Limited, temporary, narrowly tailored. What Trump is doing is none of that. He announces a blanket 15% tariff on the rest of the world. Not targeted, not temporary, not tailored. A sweeping economic hammer dropped on global trade partners. You can't make this up. Let's look at the legislative reaction. MAGA Mike Johnson says it will be a challenge to find consensus legislatively to support the tariffs. Read that carefully. That is the Speaker of the House signaling distance. That is leadership saying, we're not touching this. If they believed this was lawful and politically popular, they would be rushing to codify it. Instead, they're hiding behind executive action. That's the first fracture. Now let's move to the economic fantasy. Trump has repeatedly floated the idea of a $2,000 tariff dividend, as if tariffs are some magical revenue machine that pays consumers instead of raising prices. Economists across the board have said the same thing. Tariffs function as taxes on imports, which are overwhelmingly paid by domestic businesses and consumers. So where is this dividend coming from? It's not. Experts are saying the odds of Americans receiving these checks are effectively zero. Zero. The same way the $5,000 Doge dividend dissolved into thin air. This is magical thinking dressed up as populism. Now layer in the international consequences. The European Union is freezing trade agreements. That's not symbolic. That affects market access, regulatory cooperation, and long-term investment flows. France goes further. Let's look at what happened with Charles Kushner. He is summoned by French officials after the U.S. embassy begins attacking France's internal political dynamics, suggesting leftist radicals were responsible for a domestic murder. France responds, "Stop meddling in our affairs." Kushner refuses to appear when summoned. Not once, twice. That is a diplomatic breach. Ambassadors do not ignore host governments. That's not how this works. France then bans him from official meetings. Let me repeat that. A sitting U.S. ambassador, the president's own appointee, is banned from engaging in official meetings in one of America's oldest allied nations. Gross. Now pivot to national security. The Pentagon's top general cautions that the United States lacks sufficient munition stockpiles and allied support for the kind of military action Trump is publicly floating toward Iran. That is not minor. Modern warfare requires logistics, basing agreements, refueling capacity, intelligence cooperation. Allies matter. And right now, allies are alienated. If you are a commander looking at depleted stockpiles and frayed alliances, you do not escalate. You de-escalate. But Trump is not de-escalating. He is escalating rhetorically while the infrastructure of support is eroding. Now add polling. CNN shows Trump polling in the mid-20s among independents, Latino voters, young voters. That's not a soft dip. That's structural erosion. Independents decide general elections. When you are sitting at 26% among independents, you are not expanding your coalition. You are shrinking it. And while all of this is unfolding, Trump attacks the Supreme Court, the very institution that just ruled against him. Even conservative commentators are calling his rhetoric disgraceful. When media allies start publicly warning that your language could incite unrest, that's not a good sign. This is the cabal under stress. Economic stress, diplomatic stress, legal stress, political stress. Each individual piece might be survivable, but stacked together, markets rattling, courts rejecting authority, allies freezing cooperation, polls collapsing, Congress distancing itself. That's systemic strain. And inside the Capitol, MAGA leadership is trying to project calm while quietly admitting they don't have legislative support to back the president's actions. That's not confidence. That's containment. They are not advancing an agenda. They are managing fallout. And the more Trump doubles down, tariffs, threats, insults, the more the strain compounds. This is how instability accelerates. Not in one dramatic explosion, but in compounding fractures. Now step back, because this isn't just about tariffs. It isn't just about France. It isn't just about hockey teams declining invitations. This is a pattern. This is what happens when magical thinking replaces governance. Look at the behavioral pattern. Trump is ranting. He is attacking the Supreme Court after it rules against him. He is escalating trade wars after markets react negatively. He is floating military confrontation while generals are cautioning restraint. That's not measured leadership. That's volatility. And volatility is the one thing markets, allies, and voters hate. We've seen this movie before. Atlantic City. Trump stands in front of cameras while his casinos are heading toward bankruptcy and says they're doing better than ever. He talks about tremendous cash flow. He talks about records being broken. And then Chapter 11 hits. Over and over again. Trump Steaks, Trump Airlines, Trump University, Trump Casinos, grand declarations, reality collapse. The pattern is always the same. Inflate, deny, collapse, rebrand, repeat. And now he's doing it with the global economy. He says tariffs will pay Americans. Economists say consumers will pay more. He says allies will fall in line. The European Union freezes trade cooperation. He installs a convicted felon as ambassador to France, and France bans him from official meetings. That's not leverage. That's humiliation. This is systemic erosion. Look at the political indicators. Polling in the mid-20s among independents is not noise. That is structural weakness. Independents are the ballast of general elections. When you are underwater with them by that margin, you are not consolidating power. You are shrinking your ceiling. And inside Congress, even MAGA Mike Johnson is signaling limits. He's not rushing to codify tariffs. He's not enthusiastically embracing the economic chaos. He's saying it will be a challenge to find consensus. That's distancing language. That's a speaker preparing for plausible deniability. Now add the international isolation. When the Pentagon's top general says the United States lacks munitions and allied support for a major operation, that is not a casual aside. That is a warning flare. Modern military operations require alliance infrastructure, refueling corridors, forward operating bases, intelligence sharing. If allies are alienated because of trade wars and diplomatic insults, those logistical channels tighten. You cannot alienate your allies and simultaneously depend on them. That's not strength. That's contradiction. And this is why the panic matters. Because authoritarian posturing requires the illusion of control. It requires the appearance of dominance. But what we are seeing instead is fragmentation. Markets reacting negatively, courts pushing back, allies freezing engagement, poll numbers eroding, Congress hedging. Even conservative media figures are warning that Trump's attacks on the Supreme Court are disgraceful. When internal voices start sounding alarms, the insulation weakens. And let's talk about the tone. Mocking a gold medal women's team, laughing about impeachment in a flippant aside, surrounded by sycophants saying, "I got it, boss." It's not strength. It's insecurity amplified. It's grievance politics layered on top of economic instability. The broader message here isn't about one tariff order. It's about sustainability. Can this governing style sustain itself when the courts are rejecting core authority claims, allies are freezing trade deals, military leadership is warning about capacity shortfalls, polling is structurally weak, Congress is hesitant to own the agenda? That's not momentum, that's strain. And when strain compounds, collapse accelerates. This doesn't happen overnight. It happens in stages. First denial, then doubling down, then isolation, then institutional pushback. We are well into stage 3. And the panic on Capitol Hill right now, that's not theater. That's recognition. Recognition that this may not be another cycle they can simply spin their way out of. This is the difference between strength and delusion, between leadership and magical thinking. What we are witnessing right now is not a temporary stumble. It's the inevitable consequence of governing through ego, grievance, and chaos. When courts reject unlawful power grabs, when allies freeze cooperation, when generals warn about capacity limits, when markets recoil, that's not bias, that's reality pushing back. Democracy depends on institutions holding. It depends on truth prevailing over spectacle. And it depends on voters recognizing the difference between loud rhetoric and actual competence. Right now, the receipts are piling up. The contradictions are visible. The panic inside MAGA leadership is real because the strain is real. We cannot allow chaos to be normalized. We cannot allow unlawful economic experiments to be dressed up as patriotism. And we cannot allow attacks on the judiciary and democratic institutions to go unanswered. If you care about accountability, if you care about facts over fantasy, now is the time to stay informed and stay engaged. Hit subscribe. Let's push this channel past the next milestone together. Independent media matters now more than ever, because the truth isn't collapsing, the illusion is.